All right, so what does it mean to be a gray man? There's so many definitions out there that it can be confusing. Some of the definitions are accurate, some are not accurate, some are somewhat accurate but not completely so. Basically, to be a successful gray man, we want to fly under the radar. We don't want to be noticed by others. We want to be boring, not unique. We don't want to be interesting to others. We want to, again, fly under the radar. A lot of people I'll see on videos or forums when talking about being gray man, they'll say, just put on some old or ragged and torn clothing, maybe some workwear. They'll often suggest go get some Carhartts. And while that might be fine for certain situations, that's not a blanket statement to cover all the scenarios where you want to be an effective gray man. To be gray, it's situationally dependent. I'm going to repeat that because that is, I'm going to say, not only the most important point for this discussion, but the most important point for succeeding as a gray man in general. Succeeding in flying under the radar, in being gray, it's situationally dependent. What do I mean by this? All right, so you're in Washington, D.C. for the weekend. Or you're in Washington, D.C. in the middle of the week. It's Wednesday. How are you going to dress to fit in? Well, you're probably going to be wearing a collared shirt. It's button up, probably tucked in. You're wearing a belt, maybe some dress pants, some dress shoes, or something not too casual, at least for footwear. You don't have to be clean shaven, but if you do have a beard, it needs to be trimmed, it needs to be neat. Now, let's say you go to small town Nebraska in that same outfit with that same appearance. You walk into the local watering hole. Everyone, and I mean everyone there, is going to stop what they are doing and stare at you, wondering how you could possibly have gotten so lost. That outfit would not work for that situation. Rather, you would probably need some Wranglers, maybe some cowboy boots, or whatever footwear they're wearing out in Nebraska these days. But it ain't dress clothes, I can tell you that. So it's situationally dependent if we're going to succeed at being a gray man. Another example, it's raining outside. Everyone's wearing a yellow jacket, a bright yellow jacket. You're thinking you're going to succeed because you're wearing a gray rain jacket. No, you're going to stand out as different. If everyone is wearing bright yellow, you aren't going to need to wear bright yellow. If someone looks at you twice, if they look at you even for more than a second, you've likely already failed at being gray man. We think of surveillance teams that are following a suspect or a target. These teams, they follow the profile. They're not following your face. They're not communicating amongst their team saying, that dude over there with the receding hairline and the pronounced jaw. No, they're saying the guy with the gray jacket, green cargo pants, and advanced teams, skilled teams, will actually convey the footwear that the individual is wearing, because footwear is the hardest item to shed, the hardest item to change our appearance. We're not carrying around extra shoes in our bag, likely, but we might be carrying a different jacket, or we might be tempted to shed our jacket to change our appearance or colors. Before we move on, though, I just want to quickly mention or talk about shedding our jackets, for example. I recommend do not shed any of your clothing if you can help it, because if there's dog teams that are chasing us or pursuing us, our scent is going to be all over that article of clothing. It's going to be embedded in that jacket, for example. Once that dog and its handler get a hold of that jacket, it's going to be next to impossible to evade and escape successfully. It's not impossible, but it's near impossible. In the future, we're going to have a podcast and another video that will discuss how to successfully evade dog teams. But basically, the only effective strategy is to put time and distance between you and the dog and its handler. So, if at all possible, do not shed your clothing. But the thing about being gray man, it's so much more than the clothing that we're wearing. And this is where there's a lot of disconnect with when people are teaching out how to effectively be a gray man. It's beyond the clothing. It's also, what is our demeanor like? What is our body language saying about us? Do we have a swagger when we walk? We think of that friend. We all have that friend who just exudes confidence when he walks into the room. People love that. They're drawn to that. But that's the issue. They're drawn to it. They notice it. Or we could think of the other end of the spectrum. If someone's always walking around with their hands in their pockets, they're slouched over, whether it's accurate or not, they give the appearance that they're not sure of themselves. Maybe that they're lost, that they are waiting for someone. It stands out, it registers in our mind. Or we think of another situation where someone is hyper vigilant. They're trying to be super situationally aware of their surroundings. We think of the guy who's out with his girlfriend on a date, and he's trying to impress her, and he has to sit at the corner of the restaurant in the back corner so he can face every single exit. When they're walking through the mall, he's got his head on the swivel every 10 seconds, looking to each side. He's looking behind him. That makes it look like you are hiding something, or that you're trying to run away from someone, or even that you are the threat yourself. While it's important to be situationally aware, in fact, I encourage you to be situationally aware, you want to do so discreetly. You want to blend in. We think of in the mall, what's everyone doing? They've got their hands on their phone and they're scrolling through that. They're looking at the stores as they walk, but they're not situationally aware, checking behind them or looking behind them for threats. That's not what they're doing. We want to blend in. We want to know what the baseline of the environment is and then mimic that. I've already mentioned the most important takeaway from this discussion, that being gray man is situationally dependent. If I had to say the second most important point from this discussion, it would be this one. Keep your abilities, your agendas, and your possessions concealed. What do I mean by this? All right, so everyone enjoys talking about what they're passionate about. They like talking about what they did on the weekend. All right, so you're at work, there's a group of you having lunch together. Everyone's talking about what they did on the weekend, and now it's your turn to say what you did. And you're all excited because you're extremely into prepping. You went and bought 5 bags of rice. You just got a new generator from Cabela's, and you've got 10 gallons of fuel, and you're ready for the next grid down blackout, even if it's over 72 hours. And you want to tell everyone this. Stop. Full stop. Do not do that. Most people are not prepared. If and when that emergency happens, whether it's a grid down blackout, social unrest, whatever that emergency is, and your workmates who are not prepared, and they remember that you are, they are going to come to your house and take your stuff to provide for their families. And you're probably saying, oh, my workmate doesn't know where I live, I keep that to myself. You literally give your address to your employer. That is a requirement. They can and will find where you live. Keep your abilities, your possessions, and your agendas concealed. You do not need to advertise these to your friends. Pick another subject. Talk about the movies. All right, the last point I want to talk about is first impressions are last impressions. All right, so why is this important to flying under the radar? If someone perceives you as X, it is monumentally difficult for them to change their perception of you and to view you as Y. Okay, so how does this apply? Well, if you pop on someone's radar and become interesting to them, it is now going to be extremely difficult for you to change their perception of you and to make them think that you are not interesting. So, right from the beginning, if you are in a situation that you feel has the potential for danger, perhaps you leave work and you accidentally stumble upon a situation where there's social unrest, or you end up walking through a high crime neighborhood on the way home just because that's the route you have to take, or you take a wrong turn by accident. You need right from the get go to be conscious of being gray, of being not interesting. If you become interesting, it's more of how do you get away from that situation now rather than how do I blend in. All right, so this is by no means an exhaustive list about on the subject of being gray, but I like to keep these videos and podcasts short and sweet, just bite-sized amounts, so you can grab these on the way to work, maybe on a lunch break. I would like to, in future videos, go more in depth, perhaps into specific scenario-based situations of how we can blend into a specific environment. But future videos, I want to keep on the same theme of escape and evasion. And yeah, so till next time, remain alive.